All right, so going back to where I was, these certain questions are going to be able to kind of help you, instead of push the resist or push the direction back, and away from actually closing the sale. It's just leading them down. It's extracting them. It's very similar to if you were following someone. Say, hey, can you show me how to get here? There's a certain way, right? Like, so yeah, come here, follow me. It's almost like that. Think of it like that. Yeah, watch, let me show you. If anyone here has kids or have any younger kids in their family, there's a certain way that they tell you, oh yeah, let me show you something. There's a tonality of it, right? Where it kind of gauges your attention. And there are deeper concepts about in that to talk about persuasion. There are certain things that you could do to control the energy of that call. And it actually has a lot to do with tonality. And I think the reason why the concept of being a consultant versus a salesman is actually because of the tonality, where the tonality of a consultant is someone who genuinely wants to help you. Whereas a closer, the tonality can easily be read as someone who just wants to close you, right? Like there's a certain tonality. And so there's a difference between a salesman trying to sell you a car, the tone that they use, versus a friend showing you their car. Does that make sense? There's certain tones. And I think tonality plays a huge role in a call center environment, primarily because number one, they can't see us. And then number two, they don't understand the words that we're talking about anyway, right? Now, there's a certain way, and I don't know the exact percentages right now, but I know that it's close to 60% of the message that we give is from kinesthetics. It's from our body language. It's from the way we hold ourselves in a meeting. Obviously, in a call center environment, that is out the window because you're not necessarily in front of your client. But there's over 30% of your message that's being perceived through tonality. Less than 10% of it is the words you say. And some of you guys might have heard that before. It's called kinesthetic, tonality, and words, right? Like the way we accept or understand a message. And those who understand how to control their tonality and know how to kind of change it, like a radio station, if you will have an easier way of closing that sale. And so, for example, if in the sales conversation, there's one thing like that we went over with, and I forgot that guy's name. I think Mr. Black. He was a sales trainer. If any one of you guys were part of that 3-hour training a couple weeks back, he told you how to handle certain mindsets or certain type of buyers. And it's kind of hard because, well, what if you don't know what kind of buyer they are, or they haven't given you that much information? Well, one key way that I always used, and you guys can probably start using it or considering it, is understanding the job that they have. And so if they're, like, for example, like I'm doing a refinance for a police officer, right? This guy's a sheriff, actually. And so when I talk to him, I'm talking in a way that he is accustomed to. And so I say certain things like sir, or yes, yes, sir. That's a negative. I'll say things like that, roger that, because these are things that they relate to. And when I say certain things to add into the pitch, I'll say things like, you need to protect your budget, because they protect on a daily basis. Their instinct is to protect. You need to protect your monthly budget, or you need to protect your savings. If you're bleeding money, you need to rescue your extra cash flow. I'll say it in that way. And again, that has to do, again, with persuasion. So if on the flip side, because I'm also helping a nurse, it's a Filipino client, so they're a nurse, and so I use words a little bit differently. I approach them with a different tonality. My tonality is more of helpful, like, oh, hi, yeah, a little bit easier. I'm not talking to a sheriff, and I'm saying certain words of you should take care of this, or you need to monitor this. You need to be prepared and how can I put it? You need to rehabilitate your credit, These are words that they understand. Whereas if I'm talking to a construction worker and all I'm doing is saying long words and numbers that this construction worker doesn't understand, it's going to be natural that that construction worker is just going to push away from me. You get it? So consider those things, because these are the tools that we have before us. These are the things that we can use right now that we may be ignoring because we're playing the game of rate and fees. And a lot of it has to do with our perception. A lot of it has to do with kind of just the old habits that we have going in. And I think that if you incorporate these habits, the tips and the techniques that you learn in these meetings, or you go onto Sales Remastered on YouTube and you listen to a few of them when you're bored, or when you need some sort of advice or some sort of help to set up a close or be persuasive, or a sales script, these are reminders of how sales has evolved, but the science of closing has not. And so where closing is different from selling. Like selling, in my opinion, I believe happens on the first conversation, the first call, whereas the selling happens on the second call. But the issue is, though, is selling is happening on the first call and it's sounding like a sale. Where it's working is the sale happens on the second call, but it sounds like a collaboration. So instead of a pitch call starting off like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Niekart, this is Daniel with New American Funding. I got a couple options for you. Grab a pen and paper. Option number 1, I got 4.25, no closer or no closing costs, and your monthly payment is this. Then I got option number 2, which is 3.75. You finance your closing and your payment is this. That is a sale. And I'm sure anyone who's listening, now that you hear it, you're like, oh, fuck, you're right. If I was a prospect, all I heard was option and rate. That's all I heard. Whereas a player on a closing call, on the second call, it's going to sound like this. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Niekart, you know what? I was actually sending out the information to you right now, and I came across something. I wanted to get your feedback real quick if I can. And this is where you start the sale. They don't know that it's starting a pitch. But what you're doing is you're starting the sale. And when you start the sale, say, hey, my feedback, I got something I want to run by you, and it's this. This right then and there is where you rehash all the emotional ties that they have to the process, because you don't want to restart it. It could be 2, 3, 4 hours. And if you go right into pitching, they're not going to be in the mindset to make the decision. Again, understand that your buying decision is based off of an emotion and then justified off of logic. The issue with most of the sales pitches, it goes right into numbers. It doesn't frame the prospect's mindset. It doesn't put them back in that mind state. And so when I say, hey, I got a couple options, I want to run it past you. I noticed, Daniel, that you mentioned in our first conversation that you wanted to create some extra additional cash flow because you said at the end of each month, you only have less than a mortgage payment inside your bank account. As a matter of fact, you had mentioned that you're about check the check when everything's said and done, and it's basically the cost of living. Don't feel bad. I think I have a solution for you, and I want to run it by you. That's putting them back in the mindset. And so if someone was there at that pitch that was not there on the first call, that's helping them get back into the mindset and also add in extra notes that maybe the other person didn't mention to you. And I think that is very, very, very important. It's important to protect your time. It's important to increase your chances of making that sale. And it's important that you learn how they respond, because you're doing this process day in and day out. It's non-stop. And so when you put them back in that mindset, instead of saying, hey, I got option number 1 and option number 2, this is how I do it. This is how it should be done, or at least in my opinion, this is what I have found works. And say, you'd mentioned you want to create some savings to replenish your bank account. You also mentioned that you want to pay this house off in 13 years. And because you said that, I have an idea and I want to run it past you. I can get your payment from here. And what I'm doing is I'm adding their total payment, PITI. And if I know that I can give them a deferral and an escrow refund, I'm also adding in credit cards as well. And so if they got $3,000 credit card balance on a Chase card and they send on the credit report $100 to that Chase card, I'm adding $100 to that PITI. And so what I'm saying, your payment right now at blah, 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 let's say it's $2,000, I can bring that total payment down to $1,600. Now, this option doesn't have any closing costs. The only out-of-pocket cost is the appraisal. And when the appraisal does get back in, I have an option to get that money back to you. But I wanted to run it by you because this is in direct correlation with what you had discussed or shared with me as to your goals. Now, what's your feedback? What's your input on that? And then what they'll tell you, say, oh yeah, you know what? That sounds great. What are the fees and what are the rate? Well, the closing cost is really going to depend on which option you choose. So you see the payment here, which is the $1,600. This has no lender fee. But if you want to go to a payment down here, then you're just going to finance the lender fee. And the reason why I say lender fee is because I understand that consumers will just hear fee. And it's a little bit easier for me to get $1,629 versus $7,000. But I want to keep the direction and the momentum moving forward. I want them to buy into the payment. And then when they buy into the payment, then I unleash more of the details. I unleash more of the information. But if you can get them to buy into the solution first, you'll see that they have an easier time of digesting the details, the rate, the fees, the process. And here's another one, here's a bonus. If you can fuse into your pitch call, your sales call, a two-step process, meaning you're referring to this loan as a stepping stone, and you're letting them know that New American Funding has a signature complimentary program that we offer to our clients who are on time with their payments. As long as they make their payments on time, in 6 months, they are eligible to our complimentary features that we provide our clients that we've worked with and we provided services for with a no lender fee transaction, meaning we waive our fee and we do another refinance. The best part about it is that it's a super fast process, and because you're with us already, there's no cost. The only caveat is I need to be able to provide benefit. And so looking at the current term right here, in 6 months, as long as your payment's on time, I'll give you a call, we'll reanalyze and go back down. Because you will run across clients who have a 640 FICO but want to do a cash out to 80%. And so a lot of us are going to push away from an FHA because everyone believes that the last time they're going to do a refinance. Everyone believes that they're not going to do a refinance or they're going to be in the loan for 30 years. When all it takes is us looking at their credit history and actually bringing it to their attention that they literally refinance every year since they bought the house. Or maybe pointing out to them that before they take on Goliath, that they worry about these other items such as their FICO score, their amount of savings. And so you can create influence in your pitch. You can say, hey, I have an idea. This will actually get you 6 months of living expenses in your bank account by this time next year. Who would say no to that? Or, hey, I got an idea that this will create an extra $400 monthly savings. And because your net is check to check every month, this is going to put you back in the green. Who could say no to that? And that's how a pitch is starting. It's not saying, okay, cool. Hey, this is Daniel with New American Funding. If you guys have a pen and paper, write this down. Option number 1, 4.5. Option number 2, 3.75. Again, you're just kind of labeling yourself as an option, and you're going to get a little bit more kickback when you go through that. So that's it, guys. I know it's been an hour. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. I do strongly recommend that if you have not already,